I'd like to introduce our speaker tonight, Chris Hooker-Herring. Chris is the Vice President of Enrollment Management at Muhlenberg College. He graduated from Muhlenberg College in 1972 with a major in English. After a brief stint in a nonprofit public relations with the March of Dimes in Essex County, New Jersey, Chris joined the admissions staff at Cedar Crest College in 1973. He moved to Lafayette College as Assistant Director of Admissions in 1976, and then became Director of Publications at Moravian College in 1980. In 1987, Chris returned to his alma mater as Senior Associate Director of Admissions. He was named Director of Admissions in 1989, Dean in 1993, added financial aid to his portfolio in 1996, and was named Vice President for Enrollment Management in 2015. Chris has led Muhlenberg to record-large applicant pools and to steadily increasing selectivity, diversity, and student quality. He has served on the executive committee of his state's professional organization and has presented at regional and national conferences on such issues as early decision, merit scholarships, test optional admission, and trends in college admissions. His editorials and opinion pieces have been carried in the LA Times, the Chicago Tribune, the Philadelphia Inquirer, and the major national wire service. And with that, it's a pleasure for me to introduce Chris Hooker-Herring.
Well, good evening. It is great to be here with you. You can let me know if you can't hear me, and I will move myself closer to the microphone. I am a New Jersey guy. I grew up in New Jersey, went to high school at Princeton High School, and really enjoyed the time that my family and I spent in New Jersey. And I was also the experimental model for my younger brothers and sister on the whole college search and application process. I was the oldest of 5 kids in my family. So I was the test case for us. And I remember at the end of that process, my mom and dad and myself saying to each other, well, now finally we actually know a lot of the things that we wish we had known at the beginning of the process. So my goal tonight is to really bring you news from the front lines of college admissions that can help make you experts at the front end instead of experts at the back end like I was at the end of my college search. And I come to you very much from the land of college admissions right now. On my campus and on campuses across the country, admissions officers are right in the middle of the application review process. So on campuses across the country right now, we are reading, and grading and ultimately rating all of the applications that are pouring in from across the country. It's a high-pressure time for us, but I also know it's a high-pressure time for many of the seniors, and I know that what led up to this moment was also filled with its own kind of pressure. So I'm going to begin with a first word of advice, and this is not original with me. It's original with a woman who for many years ran the admissions operation at Stanford University. But her very first sentence to students who had written in to inquire about information from Stanford was, relax, take a deep breath, and be yourself. Relax, take a deep breath, and be yourself. And I think that's great advice as you begin the process of stepping into a college search and application experience. It's also hard advice to take because college is a major life passage, and there's a lot riding on the outcome. And so it can be hard to kind of give yourself permission to relax a little bit as you move through this process. I think one of the goals for all of us who are a part of this process, and though this is a goal for people outside of the students, so parents, admissions counselors, high school guidance counselors, all of the rest of us who are in a position to maybe provide advice and guidance to the students, is to help students feel empowered in this process. One of the biggest mistakes and one of the things that kind of makes me sad every year is seeing students who go through the process feeling kind of like things are being done to them, but that they don't really have agency in this process to act into it on their own. But when you think about it, students and families actually make 3 out of the big 4 decisions in this process. Students and families decide which colleges they're going to explore and ultimately visit. They decide which colleges to apply to. The colleges make one decision, we decide who gets in, and then it's back to the student to decide where am I going to enroll. So 3 out of those 4 big decisions rest with the student. And that's important because if students are aware of that at the front end and really internalize that and feel that, it gives them a sense not just that they're kind of being pummeled by a process that is coming at them, but that they've got power, they've got agency. They're going to get a chance to make decisions in this process as they move through the process. Also, students control a lot about how their application will be viewed by colleges. Students control a lot about how their application will be viewed by colleges. And so effort, thought, organization, and attitude all count as you students work your way through this process. And I'll say more about that in just a minute. So I want to bring you just a little bit of information about some of the big trends that are happening in college admissions right now. We are in a moment when a lot is changing in college admissions. You may have heard about prior year relative to the FAFSA and how financial aid is being figured. I'm sure you're aware of the fact that there is the quote-unquote new SAT, which is different from the SAT that we had been taking up until just a short while ago. And so we're in a period of kind of rapid, dramatic change. All of those changes have the potential to have an impact on students and parents as you go through this process. Some of the changes that may not have been written about quite as much include some good news for students. This is not such good news for colleges, but it's good news for students, and that is that the teenage population in the United States is shrinking. So there are fewer students graduating from high school right now than there were a number of years ago. And that contraction in the 18-year-old population is especially pronounced in the Northeast and the Midwest. So that is great news for students, because what that means is it's taking a little bit of pressure out of the system. The colleges out there have a smaller raw number of students to choose from, which is good news for students and families. The bad news, which is the other side of that coin, is something that educational demographers are calling a rush to quality. And the rush to quality means that the colleges that students from a high school like Chatham are probably most likely to want to go to are probably just as competitive as they were 5 years ago, if not more so. That rush to quality is students and parents becoming more and more thoughtful and careful about where they want to aim themselves, because they want to aim themselves at colleges that are going to be in a position to give them the biggest boost as they move out of college and on with their life beyond their undergraduate experience. So the rush to quality is impacting about 250 to 300 colleges across the country. It includes many of the flagship state universities. It includes the Ivy institutions. It includes many of the other highly selective small private liberal arts colleges. And those are colleges, and you read about this in the New York Times, that are seeing their applications, their applicant pools grow even larger year by year due to value judgments that are being made by students and parents about where the best return on investment can be found. What that's led to is a situation where not every student who is qualified is going to be selected for admission. And on many of the highly selective college campuses today, there is a gap opening up between qualified for admission on the one hand and actually selected for admission on the other. And I'm going to say a little bit more about that as I talk about how you build your own list and the kind of research that you want to do as you're thinking about where you're going to be going to college. But one of the things you should know in terms of that qualified versus selected equation is that colleges today are engaged in what's called whole person, individualized, contextual admission. This is happening even at the big places like the University of Michigan, Ohio State University. Even at the large places, colleges are actually following the advice that was given to them by the Supreme Court in a number of admissions cases where different groups were coming to the Supreme Court saying, we think we've got reason to believe that we're not being served well by the admissions process. And the Supreme Court issued a series of opinions that gave colleges very specific advice about how to conduct admissions. So one of the things they said was no single piece of information should be used in a mechanized or a mechanical way to make admissions decisions. So they were telling colleges, don't admit just by test score, don't admit just by GPA, don't give some groups of students an automatic head start over others. But instead, they said to colleges, you should be engaged in individualized, contextual review. Well, part of that for colleges means we're going to put each student into their own context. So if you're at a great high school like Chatham, and you have lots of opportunities available to you, colleges are going to be looking at you and saying, well, are you taking advantage of those opportunities? Are you being really engaged and involved and committed to what you're doing within your high school community? And so my advice to students in this new kind of whole person contextualized review age that we're living in is be awake as you move through high school. Don't sleepwalk through high school. Make sure that you're awake, that you're alert, that you're appreciative of the opportunities that you have being made available to you, and find a way to take advantage of some of those opportunities. Figure out what you're passionate about and pursue some passion with a real sense of commitment. Because above and beyond just the hard statistics, the test scores and the grade point average, that's part of what admissions officers are trying to figure out today, is where are your passions? What do you care deeply about? What might you bring to a college campus that's going to make that a more interesting, vital, vibrant place to be for the 4 years that you're there? So be awake, be alert, be appreciative, and be taking advantage of opportunities as they're made available to you. The other thing that I'll say in a crowded, competitive marketplace, and this is another trend in college admissions today, is that interest counts. And that means your interest in a particular college may count as they're making admissions decisions. So how do you demonstrate interest? Well, one way is to visit the campus. And I'm going to say a little bit more about the campus visit and the importance of making sure the admissions office knows you've been there when you visit the campus in just a minute. But campus visit is one way to demonstrate interest. Your college essay, if you're applying to a college that asks for an essay or essays, is another way to demonstrate interest. What I say to students all the time is a great essay by itself isn't necessarily going to get you admitted. A bad essay can prevent you from being admitted. But a really good essay, an essay that reflects that you've actually taken some time and you're making an effort to put your best foot forward, invites an admissions officer to slow down and take a little bit more time as they review your application. So an essay that reflects effort and thought on your part is an invitation to admissions officers to slow down and take an extra measure of care as they review your application. So that's a way to demonstrate interest. The biggest demonstration of interest, the most powerful demonstration of interest, of course, is an early decision application. Early decision is a binding admissions agreement. It's where you're saying to a particular college, if you admit me, I will enroll. And on many college campuses today, early decision really resonates with admissions committees. On many of the highly selective college campuses today, we are filling 50%, or in some cases, more than 50% of our class through early decision. Last year, Penn filled 54% of their class through early decision. This year, Penn is filling 55% of their class through early decision. So that's something to just be aware of. It's a wrinkle in the admissions process that may have an impact on how you decide to organize and manage your own application process. There are lots of good reasons not to apply early decision. The best reason not to apply early decision is you just don't find a college that emerges as a clear-cut first choice. But if you do find a college that emerges as a clear-cut first choice, just know that an early decision application where you're saying to a particular college, I've looked hard at your campus, and I see something special on your campus that could be special for me during my 4 years of undergraduate education, that kind of commitment, that kind of communication allows for a kind of reciprocity on the part of the college that nothing else in the application process provides for. There was a guy named Fred Hargadon who for many years was the Dean of Admission at Princeton University, and Fred used to say that early decision was like two people being in a pitch dark room, not able to see each other, really not able to make each other out, and now somebody flips the light on. And all of a sudden, you can actually see each other in a way that you may not be seen in the regular decision applicant pool, which is typically much, much larger than the early decision applicant pool, where you're saying to colleges, well, I like you, but I probably like 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or 11 or 12 other colleges, and we'll see what happens in the spring. And that's a different kind of a relationship. It's a different kind of an equation for the colleges. So those are some of the trends, some of the wrinkles in the admissions process right now that it's important to be aware of. So how do you build your list? How do you put together an exploratory list of colleges to kind of think about and begin to look at? Here's one of the biggest mistakes that I see students make every year. They start external rather than internal. And when you think about the fact that nationwide right now, at all 4-year colleges, the 4-year graduation rate is only 38%. At all 4-year colleges, the 4-year graduation rate is only 38%. That starting external thing right away is not such a good idea, because it doesn't give you an opportunity to really start internal, to look at your own internal landscape and to think hard about who you are, what you want from your college experience, and what kind of college is most likely, what kind of college environment is most likely to help you really flourish at the college level. College is a big adjustment. You're moving away from home. You're moving away from the structure that your family has provided. You're now in a situation where you need to be independent. You're going to set your own hours. You're going to figure out how much or little do I study, who do I hang out with, where am I going to find my friends, all of those things. And thinking hard initially about yourself, about who you are, about how you learn best, about what matters most to you, is the best way to give yourself the best chance to land ultimately on a campus where you can really flourish. So thinking about how do I learn best? Do I learn okay if I'm in a huge lecture hall with 500 other students? Do I care about relationship with professors? Would I rather be taught by real faculty, or am I okay being taught by teaching assistants? Do I think I want to be in the big city, or would I like to be way out in the country, or am I going to feel more comfortable in a suburban environment? Do I want a college close to home or far, far away? There are a lot of those kinds of things to think about that are going to help you put together a list that is really custom tailored to you, not just a list built based on, I've seen Syracuse in March Madness and the Carrier Dome looks like fun in March, but really kind of thinking about who am I and what kind of environment would be best for me for my educational experience. Do your research. And as you're putting your list together, research is really, really important. And there are lots of places where you can do great research today. I mean, the resources are incredible. You can go to any Barnes & Noble, and they've got lots of college guidebooks. My favorite is really the Fisk Selective College Guide. It's edited by Ted Fisk, who's the former education editor for the New York Times. And it gives you not just statistical data about colleges, but it also gives you a sense of what those campuses are really like. What's the campus climate like? What's the personality of the school? So that can be an interesting guidebook. Tremendous resources on the internet. And some of you may already be visiting the CHEG website or the CAPEX website or the College Board website or the Princeton Review website. Lots, U.S. News and World Report, lots of websites where you can get lots of information about colleges. The college websites themselves are actually the best place to get information, because even at U.S. News and World Report, their data is a year old, because they're always one cycle behind in terms of their publishing cycle. Whereas the college websites are going to give you absolutely up-to-the-minute data. So if you're trying to figure out, what are the mean SAT scores, or what was the average GPA for last year's entering freshmen, or, any number of other things, what was the average financial aid grant that the college gave, the most recent data is going to be on each college's website. So as you begin to hone your list and build your list, don't just take U.S. News and World Report's word for it, or the College Board's word for it, but you can go to the college websites and get absolutely up-to-the-minute accurate data. You're also at a high school where you've got a great high school guidance staff. So make sure that you take advantage of the high school guidance staff here. They're experienced. They know about what's happening in the admissions marketplace. And so they can give you really good advice. And also, they're going to keep you on track in terms of all the important dates and deadlines and kind of time post markers that you need to be aware of. But all of that research is really, really important in helping you ultimately land at the right place. Remember the rush to quality as you begin to build your list, because one of the other mistakes that I sometimes see students make, particularly at high-powered high schools, is that they build a list that is almost exclusively too ambitious. So I think it's good to be ambitious. I think there ought to be some schools on your list that are what college admissions folks refer to as reaches. You're reaching for that school, and it may be a little bit beyond where your numbers suggest you can get in, but it's a school that you've got a real interest in and you're going to reach for that school. But don't build a list that is entirely made up of reaches. Because given what's happening with the rush to quality, those reaches may prove to be out of your reach. And if you're looking at the most elite institutions, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Stanford, Northwestern, MIT, Rice, and Amherst, Williams, Wesley, and Swarthmore, it's a roll of the dice. No matter how good you are, you can have double 800s, you can be a 4.0 student, it's a roll of the dice. Harvard last year had a total acceptance rate of just under 7%. At a 7% acceptance rate, no matter how good you are, it's like entering the lottery and hoping that you're the lucky one who gets hit by lightning. So not bad to have reaches, but don't make your list all reaches. In the middle of your list should be some schools that I call realistic options. And realistic options are schools where your numbers match up with what they're saying about the middle of their applicant pool. So your numbers and the middle of their applicant pool look like a pretty good match. Again, because of the rush to quality, depending upon what's happening on a given campus in a given year, even a school where you are realistic, where you're a realistic candidate, isn't a guarantee that you'll be admitted. So those realistic schools where your numbers match up with the middle of their published numbers about what the middle of their class looked like last year, you should see those as kind of 50-50 chances. Places where you've got a solid chance to be admitted, but it's not a guarantee. And then you've got to have some schools on your list where you believe and your numbers suggest this school should be a lock for me. This is a place where I really, truly believe that I can get in. That's what some people call safety schools. Admissions officers really don't like that term, safety school. But everybody needs at least one safety school. And make sure that your safety school is actually a school you would be willing to attend, because it may be the school that you end up attending. So there's no point applying to a safety school if in your own mind you're saying, there is no way I would ever go to this college, but I'm just going to apply there because I'm sure that I can get in. Make sure that your safety school is a school that you've been thoughtful about as well, and that it's a school that you actually would be willing to attend if you get admitted. Here's the other thing. Don't treat a safety school like a safety school. If you treat a safety school like a safety school, don't be surprised if they treat you like a safety student and put you on the wait list. And that is happening with a greater and greater degree of frequency these days. If schools are getting the sense that this student really isn't very seriously interested in us, they threw an application in at the very deadline, they've never visited our campus and they live an hour and a half away, they're really not showing any sign of interest beyond simply having filed an application. A lot of colleges today are saying, we'll waitlist this student and we'll see whether they need us and we need them later on in the spring and see how things turn out later. So even with your safety school, give yourself the opportunity to visit their campus and look around and get to know them better. You might discover, hey, I like this school a lot more than I thought I was going to, just based on what I read in a guidebook or what I saw on a website, and all of a sudden it becomes a real option for you in your head and your heart that you could see yourself going to and being happy at. Visit the campuses that you're most interested in. If you can get there, and I know, if you're looking at UCLA or USC, it may be tough to get to that campus, but if you can get there, visit the campus. Why is that important? It's important really for two reasons. It's important because in an interest counts world, the admissions office wants to know that you've been there. They want to know that you respect them enough to come and do firsthand investigation. So that's why my advice is when you visit the campus, call ahead, make an appointment, make sure the admissions office knows you've been there. If they don't know you've been there, they can't give you credit for having come and done a visit. And when you call ahead, they'll be able to tell you what their schedule is on the day when you're coming. So when are the student-guided tours running? When are the information sessions happening? If they offer interviews, and if you'd like an interview, when are the interviews available that day? If you set everything up in advance, all of the things that you want to have happen, you can be sure will happen. If you just show up on a campus, you might show up at a time when a tour is going to go out or when somebody's available to talk to you, or you might not. So calling ahead is important. Even if you do just show up on campus, though, unannounced, it's worth it to drop by the admissions office. They will have a card or a little form that they'll ask you to fill out. Later on, when you apply, that card or form will be caught up to your application. So it'll give them a record of the fact that you were on campus to do firsthand investigation, and that is important. So what else do you want to do while you're there? Well, what you really want to do is try to figure out while you're there, give yourself an opportunity to figure out, is this a place that could feel like home for me for the 4 years that I'm in college? So my advice is, if the college is offering it, and if you have time, take advantage of it. If they're offering a student-guided tour and you've got time, take the tour. If they're offering an information session, do the information session. If they offer individual interviews, usually those will happen for juniors after April 1st or maybe after May 1st, because up until May 1st, colleges are still in the hunt for working with high school seniors for their senior class, for their freshman class. But after April 1st or May 1st, many colleges offer interview opportunities. That's a great opportunity to sit down with an admissions officer, talk about your educational goals and objectives, give them an opportunity to get to know you better as a person, and all of that can weigh ultimately on, do you get admitted? On some campuses, it can also weigh on, do you get financial aid? And how much financial aid do you get? Because if you get an admissions officer on your side as an advocate, that is a great thing. That's a great thing as your application goes through the application process, and it's a great thing as you go through the financial aid process. So if a college offers an interview, and if you're ready in that interview experience to go in and put your best foot forward, my advice is take advantage of that. While you're on campus too, people watch. Look around. Be aware of your surroundings. Take a look not just at the tour guide who's giving you the tour or the admissions officer who's doing the information session, but really look around at everybody else on that campus. Are they engaged with each other? Are you seeing any examples of students and faculty engaging with each other? Are people walking with their heads up or their heads down? Do people acknowledge each other on the path if they're walking along one of the big campus pathways? All of those things are going to give you clues about what the vibe is on that particular campus. And is it an environment, is it a campus culture, is it a campus personality that appeals to you? Develop a list of questions in advance of your visit. Show up with a list of questions that are going to allow you to get a deeper look at who that college is. If you know that you're leaning in a particular direction in terms of academic major, ask questions about, what is it about biology on your campus that's really special? Or do the science students on your campus have an opportunity to do research with a faculty mentor? Or what kinds of internship opportunities is your campus able to help students compete for? Or, one of the most important, do you have placement data actually written down anywhere? You know, if you're asking a college, do you have a good pre-med program, the admissions officer is probably going to say, yes, we've got a great pre-med program. So then your next question should be, well, can you show me a list of where your students are actually enrolling in med school right now? And the colleges that have taken the time and the effort to compile those lists so that they can give you hard data about where their students are going, who's hiring their accounting majors, who's hiring their finance majors, what's happening to their science students. All of that data is really important. It's return on investment data, and most colleges, unfortunately, don't have it. But you're looking for those needles in the haystack that do have it, because that's going to communicate to you that they take the whole career planning and graduate school placement process really seriously. And that's a big part of why you're going to college. The other thing is that today, not all colleges are created equal. And that's especially true in terms of the financial health of the different college campuses you're going to be walking onto. Now, when you ask a college, are you financially healthy, they're probably never going to say, oh no, we're really, we're really limping along, things aren't good here. But there are clues that you can get when you're walking around on campus. Are you walking past building after building where the paint is peeling and it looks like it hasn't had a new paint job in 10 years? Are you looking at buildings where the interiors are kind of dilapidated and just don't look good? Are you looking at classrooms that all look old-fashioned and don't have current technology in them? When you ask colleges about what kind of scientific equipment do they have, and you can ask, do you have an electron microscope? Do you have a DNA sequencer? There are big, expensive pieces of equipment that the best resourced colleges absolutely are going to have. At Muhlenberg, we have 2 electron microscopes. We have a scanning and a transmission electron microscope for a student body of only 2,200. Those kinds of things are important for students and parents to ask about and find out about, because it's going to give you a clue about how healthy financially is that college. If they're not healthy financially, here's the risk. The risk is that a major that was there when you entered as a freshman might not be there when you're a junior. Or an extracurricular activity that you were really interested in that was there when you were a freshman might not be there when you're a junior. Or a varsity athletic program might disappear by the time you've reached your sophomore or junior year. Or they may have to do something with financial aid where they're whittling away at aid packages in years subsequent to the first year in ways that make the college less affordable for you as a junior than it was as a freshman. So looking for those clues about how do things look on campus is really important. And asking tour guides, have any programs been added, or have any programs been subtracted recently? Students tend to be very honest on college campuses. They'll tell you what the real deal is. So if you've got a question, ask a student, because students are going to tell you the truth. The goal is for you to find a great fit. In the end, you want to find a place that can feel like a true home away from home for the 4 years that you're in college. And if you're doing your research, if you're being thoughtful as you build your list, if you're looking inward first and really surveying your own internal landscape, all of those things heighten the potential that in the end, you're going to arrive at a place that is a great fit for you. I've got one last piece of advice, and this is really about the application process itself. My hope for students always is that you will make your college application process an exercise in self-discovery. One of the secrets of life is learning how to put your best foot forward. That is one of the big secrets in life. That's going to have an impact on what happens to you when you go for job interviews, on what happens to you in the workplace, on what happens to you with friends and family. So if you figure out how to put your best foot forward, that's going to make your life better in lots of ways far into the future. The college application process is a great opportunity to start to practice that, to start to get practice at putting your best foot forward. So my advice is, don't see all those questions on a college application as just a disconnected set of lines to fill in or boxes to check off, but see that application in its whole as a chance to tell your story. And as hard as it is, and I know it's hard at 17 or 18 years old to tell a whole bunch of strangers on the other side of the desk your story, the students who do that best are the students who have the greatest number of doors open to them at the end of the college search process. For parents, I will say, and I say this as a parent of 2 students who now have gotten through the college process, so woohoo for me. I'm done with that. But I will say that for parents, the parent timeline and the student timeline for really getting serious about this process rarely line up in perfect consistency. And very often parents feel a sense of urgency about this before your students are letting you know that they feel urgency about it. But trust me, they are thinking about it, and it is kind of percolating. And so my advice is give them some time and some space to kind of work with guidance folks and to work with you as they're ready and as they're willing to start to have real conversations about this big issue. Students, my advice to you is talk to your parents. Letting them in on what you're thinking. They care about this deeply. They want your future to be a wonderful, successful future. So let them in. And to the extent that you do, that's going to just lower the pressure and lower the anxiety for everybody. And in the end, I come back to where I started. Relax, take a deep breath, be yourself. Good luck with your college searches. Would you like me to take a question or two? Alrighty, if we've got some questions, I'll be glad to take a question or two. Yes? Early action. Yep. It doesn't, only because it's not binding. Early decision is a binding agreement where the student is saying, if you take me, I'm coming. Early action is a great deal for the students where they can find it because the students find out early, but they're not under any obligation to say yes to the college. So a number of colleges are offering early action now rather than early decision. Harvard is one who had actually dropped early decision for a while. When they brought their early program back, they brought it back as a non-binding early action program. For Harvard, that makes sense because Harvard's belief is, hey, if you're lucky enough to get into Harvard, of course you're coming, and usually they're right. But Brown had a non-binding early action program. They were getting 5,000 applications a year early action, and yet those students early action were not necessarily loyal to Brown if they were getting into Harvard or Princeton or Yale later on in the process. So Brown dropped their early action program, went to binding early decision. Now they get, a smaller number of early decision applicants, but those students are really committed to Brown, and they're saying to Brown, if you admit me, I really want to come. So there's been movement back and forth on college campuses between early action and early decision. I would say if there's a trend the trend has probably been a little bit more in the direction of binding early decision, because what colleges are saying in many cases is, if we're going to give something away early, we want there to be reciprocity coming back to us. We want the energy, we want this energy to really be flowing in both directions. But early action is a great deal for students, and where you find it, it can be a way to get an early acceptance in your pocket, take the pressure off a little bit, and now you can just wait and see what happens with your other applications without necessarily being bound to that school that admitted you early action. Sir. Sure. So the question is, if I understood the first question, it's just how many colleges should be on the list, and in what categories should they be, and right, and then when is a good time to kind of start this whole process as a parent as well as a student. If it were my kids, and at one point it was my kids, I said to them, look, guys, let's not apply to the world, because that's a lot of application fees. Let's try to whittle it down a little bit, and maybe find two, and two. So 2 reaches that are these are the schools that you really want to reach for, and it may be unlikely that you're going to get admitted, but you want to take your shot. 2 realistics, and then two safeties. And in the end, to my surprise, they both ended up applying early decision to Muhlenberg. So they both came to Muhlenberg, they both graduated from Muhlenberg, and now they're having great fun living in Brooklyn. And so life is good. But I think ideally 2, 2, and 2 kind of protects you. I'm seeing more students who are going maybe for 3, 3, and 3. But I think applying to just an unreasonably large number of colleges really dilutes your opportunity to focus on the colleges that you are most interested in, and figure out ultimately, once those acceptances roll in, where do I think I really want to be? Because if students don't go early somewhere, the likelihood is they'll have more than one option in the springtime. And for students who've just been putting off thinking deeply about this and trying to kind of hold this whole big decision at arm's length, that sometimes can make for a really agonizing April. Because May 1st is the national candidates reply date. You've got to have a check and a commitment card somewhere by May 1. And if you've really kind of said, I don't want to think about this until I absolutely have to, all of a sudden, April is there, you're at the end of your senior year, there are a lot of other things going on, and now you've got to make a decision. And that sometimes can lead to bad decision-making that then leads to feeding that 38% four-year graduation rate, because students end up on a campus that really wasn't a great choice for them. In terms of when to start, I think now is a great time to start. I mean, just in a gentle kind of, not uber urgent sort of way. But I think, starting to certainly for students, starting to think now about how do I think I learn best? What kind of environment do I think I'd like to be in? What kind of majors am I interested in? Because if you're interested in a highly specialized major, that's going to narrow the selection set in terms of school choices. So if you know you want engineering, that narrows the selection set, because not all colleges offer engineering. If you know you want sound engineering, that's narrows the selection set even further. So a lot of that is going to depend on what the student believes their passion is, and then you know, what kind of environment do they think they want to be in order to pursue that passion? And again, I think the great news at Chatham is the guidance staff here is going to help students kind of think about that as students are moving along, and is going to give students important points along the way by which they should have a certain kind of thinking or a certain part of the process completed. Yes, sir. I think a gap year can be a great idea. We see a growing number of students who are taking a gap year, they come back a year more mature. In many cases, you know, they've done something with that gap year that has given them another kind of experience, and that allows them to bring some life experience to the college campus with them that can be a really valuable thing to have. So depending upon how mature a student is at the end of high school and how ready to take on this next big step the student seems to be, a gap year can be a great opportunity to have a different kind of experience, but also mature in a way that then will make the college experience even more successful and more valuable. Yes? Right. Good question. The question is, if you decide to go early decision, does it limit your monetary, you know, returns from the colleges? A couple of things about that. Number one, it does limit it in that once you've been admitted early, you are expected to withdraw all other applications. So you're never going to get to that moment in the spring when maybe you've heard from 5 or 6 colleges, they've all sent you now aid packages, and you can sit down at the kitchen table, look at each aid package and say, okay, which college made us the best deal financially? So you lose that opportunity if you go early decision. In terms of how colleges are managing early decision, though, there was a time when there were some colleges that were lowballing their early decision students in terms of the financial aid that they would offer. That has, for the most part, I think, stopped because colleges finally figured out that it's bad business to treat your best, most enthusiastic customers worst. That's really terrible business. If colleges are supposed to be places where smart people congregate, that's really a dumb thing for colleges to do because families talk to each other. And if somebody, you know, gets admitted early and is really excited, but then gets a terrible financial aid award and can't afford it, they're going to tell other people in their community. And you, the college, your early decision pool may be smaller the next year because people are finding out that you're just not being fair to the families that you're admitting. So most colleges now, particularly the ones that are running really robust early decision programs and are filling half of their class through early decision, the way they got there was by being really fair to students under early decision, which means they may not be giving you the very best deal because if you shop hard enough, you can always find another college that's willing to make itself cheaper, but they're going to give you a fair deal in terms of the financial aid that they're offering. Yes? That's a really good question. One of the reasons I like the FISC guide, and it's FISKE, is because that gives you qualitative as well as quantitative information. It makes an attempt at actually capturing a sense of the campus culture and how that campus operates. So, and it's going to tell you what it knows, what it's able to find out about trends on campuses. So, have they been having record large application pools for the last 3 years in a row, that kind of thing. I think the hard thing with quality is that it varies. The definition of quality varies from person to person, and also the institutional quality for a particular student can vary from institution to institution. If you want theater or biology pre-med, we're a great place to be. But if you want, some other program where we're not as large or not as strong, we may not be a great place to be, but the college right down the road might be a great place to be. So much of what defines quality ultimately is not just who that school is and what their reputation is and what the size of their applicant pool is, but it's also what is the program that I, the student, am interested in, like on this campus. If I think I want to major in film studies, can I get a great film studies program on this campus, or would I be better off somewhere else? If I want to major in mechanical engineering, can I get a great mechanical engineering program on this campus, or would I be better off somewhere else? And that's one of the reasons that I really encourage families to ask for placement data from the colleges that you're considering, because then you don't have to take an admissions officer's word for it. If a college can show you, yeah, we say we've got a great pre-med program, and here is the list of where our students are enrolled in medical, dental school, and vet school right now, and it's a list that is a yard long, and it's great places that you recognize, and at some, the way we organize ours is, and we tell you how many are in that school right now, so you can get a hard data sense of where are students going. I wish every college in the country was paying more attention to placement data, because that's a way for parents and students to get at specific quality, not just general quality writ large based on an institutional reputation. Yes? Yep. That is a great question, and here is the answer. If you apply early decision to Muhlenberg, once you've been admitted, we share our early decision acceptance list. We don't share the whole list, but once you've been admitted early, we share that list with Lehigh, Lafayette, Bucknell, F&M, Gettysburg, Dickinson, Colgate, Hamilton, Skidmore, Swarthmore, Haverford, Bryn Mawr, a whole raft of places with whom we share a lot of application overlap. Let's say that you've also applied early decision to Lafayette. Once Lafayette gets our list, and we know now that you've breached the early decision agreement, we both will withdraw the offer of admission, and we both will close your file. So colleges are sharing information with each other to try to protect the integrity of the early decision program, because there is, on many campuses, a certain degree of preferential consideration that goes along with an early decision application. They want to make sure that families are also honoring the spirit and the letter of that early decision agreement. I'm seeing people start to leave. I don't want to hold you hostage any longer. Thanks again for having me, and good luck with your searches.